Marketplace revolution, how retail media and e-commerce are redefining success. The way I think about the retail media industry and the innovation and revolution that's happening is kind of how there was more time between the invention of the copper sword and the steel sword than there was between the steel sword and nuclear weapons. What that means to me is that there's not much innovation at first. They're kind of like figuring it all out and making sure this is the right platform. But once that innovation kicks off, it's gangbusters, and it's just changing every single day, which creates a lot of opportunity, also with it a lot of confusion. And there's nobody better to talk about that and help guide us than Kiri Masters. So welcome to Tap Into an Expert, the podcast where we sit down with industry leaders to explore the questions that matter most in today's rapidly evolving business landscape. I'm your host, Eric Scheinkup, CEO and co-founder of The Desire Company. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Kiri Masters, a true trailblazer in the world of e-commerce and retail media. Kiri began being named as a top 100 retail influencer by Rethink Retail and was honored by Ad Age 40 Under 40. Kiri was the founder of Bobsled Marketing and formerly served as head of retail marketplace strategy at Acadia after Bobsled was acquired by them. She has spent years helping brands navigate complex retail marketplaces like Amazon and Walmart, offering unparalleled expertise in retail media and marketing. Kiri currently writes a column for Forbes and serves as the host of the daily podcast Retail Media Breakfast Club. In this episode, we'll dive deep into the evolution of retail marketplaces, the growing influence of retail media, and how brands could leverage expert-driven strategies to build trust with consumers. We'll also tap Kiri's expansive knowledge of e-commerce to uncover actionable insights for brands looking to thrive in this competitive space. So let's get started. Kiri, thank you so much for being here with us, especially all the way from Australia. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Eric. Great to be here.
So segment one, the marketplace evolution. You have seen this from the very beginning, and it has completely reshaped consumer behavior. So retail marketplaces, Amazon and Walmart being the biggest and most well-established, they've completely transformed how we shop. They become that one-stop destination for everything from everyday essentials to niche products. With its growth, though, comes new challenges for brands trying to stand out in such crowded spaces, especially with the expansion of Walmart and Walmart Connect very recently, and all of the different brands that are now able to participate. So in this segment, we're going to explore how these platforms have evolved over the years and what it means for brands navigating today's competitive landscape. So Kiri, what are the key ways retail marketplaces have evolved over the past decade for better and for worse?
Yeah, so I actually funnily started out in this industry in 2015, was my first year as a consultant working with brands on Amazon. And that was the very first year of Prime Day. Prime Day was just one day back then. I don't know if you do much shopping on Prime Day today, but it's basically like a whole week now. But it was just one day back in 2015. Certainly a lot has changed since then. I think that we've all gotten used to the convenience. Certainly, I have a lot of my orders just arriving the same day or the next day. Retail marketplaces like Amazon and increasingly, we're seeing with Walmart as well, are not just retailers, but they're also entertainment conglomerates as well. And they're using that audience information and inventory to really good effect on the media side, which I think we'll talk about later. And I guess one thing that's, for better or worse, the business model of a marketplace can encourage a bit of a race to the bottom. When you're looking for some commodity product, you'll just see pages and pages of the same product being drop shipped from China without any real differentiation. And so I think that that's a paradox of choice situation where sometimes too much choice is a bad thing. And it creates incentives for these sellers to maybe cut some corners to, there's fakes and fraud and fraudulent reviews and things like that are established on these marketplaces, which has been the case since the beginning. But because it is so competitive, I think that, some bad actors manage to sneak in and they're trying to be successful on the platform any way that they can. And that can lead to, consumer safety issues and fraud.
Yeah, I mean, that whole concept is amazing. I was just reading with Walmart now offering anybody to be able to sell it, because the thought is, I mean, how consumers have really changed their thinking is, well, if I'm going to shop, I better be able to get everything I want from this one destination. And so Walmart kind of had to open it up. And now you could go on and you could buy Trader Joe's groceries. And it's not Trader Joe's selling those at Walmart. That's people just going to Trader Joe's, buying the products, and then listing them on Walmart.com. And that creates a lot of safety concerns for what's actually in those products. Trader Joe's is not happy about it. So, I mean, it's amazing. And I think that is because consumer expectations have changed. So during that time, during this decade, how have consumer expectations changed? What are the main factors that are influencing those expectations?
Yeah, I think this quote, I'm going to attempt to paraphrase, came from Jeff Bezos, and someone asked him to do some future predictions about where things are headed. And he said, I can't do that, but I can just tell you that people will always want things cheaper and faster.
Yeah.
Or they'll never not want things cheaper and faster or something like that. And that really kind of sums everything up. It's either getting cheaper or getting faster and more convenient. And so we look at, recently in the last couple of years, the rise of ultra low cost shopping apps like Shein and Temu and AliExpress becoming super, super popular. And then Amazon building out this network of fulfillment centers that would be able to get same or next day delivery to a huge percentage of the population. Walmart making huge strides in that area as well. So those are really the two factors I think that most changes up is faster and cheaper.
Yeah. And to your point earlier, it could be pages and pages of the exact same products these days. Like, that's not a good consumer experience, but it is the marketplace experience. So what are the biggest challenges for the brands that are trying to stand out, that are trying to sell in such competitive marketplaces?
Yeah, I think there's been a sense for a long time that these platforms are pay to play. And in order to stand out, in order to get ahead of the competition, that you need to pay for a slot through sponsored products or display advertising in order to get in front of your audience through branded search terms as well as unbranded. And that can be pretty challenging for brands who are sort of used to a wholesale selling environment where you're paying a slotting fee, you might be paying for some trade marketing on the floor in order to get some more eyeballs. But online, it's a constantly evolving dynamic, and you need to be constantly sort of tweaking that ad strategy. So it really seems like it's an entirely different skill set to selling wholesale to a retailer. There's so many components, but the advertising piece is sort of the most obvious one for brands as they're starting out. Is we have to get this advertising aspect right. Otherwise, it's very difficult to rely on organic placement alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you look at the different pages of the same product or very similar product, one of the only things that could really differentiate the good sellers from the bad sellers or the real products from the fake knockoff products is content. Have you seen that evolved, or the importance of content in retail media or these retail marketplaces over the years?
Yes, there's been a huge evolution here. So 9-10 years ago when I was first starting out, you basically had like 5 thumbnail images and a search description that was all just plain text on the third-party seller side. And only if you were a vendor selling wholesale to Amazon, that was, reserved for the very largest brands, then you had the privilege of paying, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to have some like visual content on your page. And that was who it was restricted to. It was very expensive to not just create that content, but to actually get Amazon to host it on your product detail pages. And today, any seller on Amazon has access to rich content capabilities, to video, to all kinds of content. And, that comes at a cost to Amazon to build up that infrastructure and host all of that content. So I always like to look at what are these platforms investing in? And this is one area where they have just rolled out so many optimizations and changes to how brands can produce content faster with AI and cut content into different formats so it can be uploaded. Like they're trying to make it as easy as possible for brands to add video and lifestyle content. So if Amazon is doing that, you've got to imagine that it has a huge impact on sales. So that's where I like to look where the puck is going there.
Absolutely. I mean, Amazon put out a couple stats for all their sellers saying if you have video on your product page, you're going to get 40% less returns. Like that's pretty significant. Now, they didn't give much guidance around that, and not all content is created equal, but that's actually really interesting, at least to have them stating that. The next important piece is that the right people need to see the right content at the right time. All right. And that is where retail media and that first person data comes into play, which brings us to segment 2, retail media's growing role. So retail media, it's emerged as one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful tool for brands looking to connect with shoppers, especially online. Amazon ads, Walmart Connect, they've been reshaping how brands allocate their marketing budgets. And that offers new opportunities, but it also presents a lot of unique challenges. Like, so for example, instead of saying, okay, brand, just go to your ad agency and give us all the content that your ad agency creates, because it's going to be the same on Target and Amazon and Walmart and Sam and everywhere else. They're saying, come to us. We're going to help you create the right content. We're going to deliver it to the right audience. So let's discuss why retail media is such a game changer in that case, but how can brands really navigate it, all levels of brands, and use it effectively? So, Kiri, retail media networks, they become the dominant force in advertising. How did we get here? What are some of the key trends driving the rapid adoption of retail media among brands?
It's fascinating when you look at the landscape of retail media providers, because we've got in the US 200 retail media networks. And I'm not exaggerating. Like every retailer is out there building a retail media network because it's super profitable. Advertising is super profitable. Like once you build it, there's various estimates out there, but it's, 70 to 80% profit margin on selling ad space. So if you're a grocery retailer operating on super thin margins, that sounds pretty attractive. So a lot of entrance into the space. However, when we look at who has the share of ad dollars, 3/4 of it goes to Amazon, just under 10% goes to Walmart, and then the rest are kind of fighting over the scraps. Those other, 248 or whatever it is. So it's very interesting to see. I think the other retailers catching up will, need to find different ways to differentiate, because Amazon just has such a massive lead in terms of functionality. But I mean, why is this popular for brands? It's because of the access to shopper data and purchase habits and interests, and just how much these retailers know about us. And so even though there are many other networks, we'll just stick with the Amazon analogy. What Amazon knows about you from your purchasing habits, who's in your household, what interests you have, what sport you play, what types of food you like to eat. And then we look at the media side, what books you read on Kindle, what music you listen to on Amazon Music, what you're watching on Prime Video. So they have this amazing set of data points that tell you what kind of consumer you are. And a brand trying to reach you as a consumer is able to tap into that in a way that you're not able to do on other advertising platforms, with cookies going away, lots of privacy regulations. That data about consumers, because it sits within the ecosystem and it's like tied to your shopper ID that you log into, that's a huge asset. And so that's a lot of what, particularly at the higher end of like the display advertising and connected TV ads that the larger brands are investing in today, that's the type of data that they want to tap into. And that's what's available in retail media. But then also actually for the consumer brands, being able to see if a purchase was made within that ecosystem, rather than trying to match it up in the back end as you do with like running a TV campaign and then looking at your Kroger sales and trying to see if there was a lift from that. Because it's all in one ecosystem, it's a closed loop attribution.
Yeah. And all the retailers have that, right? They all have that first party data. Obviously, Amazon's is the most personal, and they know when somebody's pregnant oftentimes before the rest of the family. or whatever life event is happening because of the different things that you're watching or looking at or searching or buying. But every retailer says that they have the first party data that could change your business. So brands are being pulled in a lot of different directions with the retail media
Mm.
networks. Although, 90% or whatever is controlled by the top two, everybody is trying to force you to work on their retail media network. So, back in the day, it was the big brands would just buy out the shelf space that you could see when you walk in the store, or
Mhm.
they would pay for that content opportunity that you were just mentioning earlier on. One, how do smaller brands or emerging brands play within this really dominated ad spend marketplace environment? What strategies can they use to send out? And then what are some of the common mistakes that you see when brands are using retail media networks, and how can you recommend they avoid them?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think there's a interesting dynamic between smaller brands and bigger brands. And the smaller brands are wondering like, oh, what are we missing out on? Because we've got these smaller budgets. And how in the world are we supposed to compete with P&G and Coke? Because we don't have those kind of budgets. And so there's a bit of an inferiority complex because of the budget size. I can tell you on the enterprise side, they may not be hurting for budget, but they are hurting for speed and agility. And I was speaking with someone who used to do media buying at an enterprise brand, and they said to pull out $1 from one retailer and spend it at a different retailer because the results were going to be better, they had to go and get like written approval to do that.
Yeah.
So I would say for the smaller brands, your agility and ability to react to trends and jump on things is your biggest advantage here, because the big brands, just because of their size and the lots of different reasons, they may have committed certain amounts of ad spend to different retailers. They may be working through lots of layers of agencies and whatnot to run their campaign. They can't react at the same speed as you can. And that's the thing that you should use to your advantage. We saw this during the pandemic as well. The big brands just kind of like pulled out, and some of these small challenger brands were able to win a top spot that they'd never been able to access before because the big guys just couldn't respond to what was happening fast enough.
Super interesting. And that brings us into segment 3, where we're going to ask you to be smarter about predicting the future than Jeff Bezos. Kiri's expansive view on retail media and e-commerce. So, Kiri, you've spent years at the forefront of e-commerce strategy, helping brands navigate complex marketplaces, develop winning strategies for them. So your experience gives you a very unique perspective on where e-commerce stands today and where it's heading next. So I want to take a step back, look at the big picture, the trends that are shaping retail media and e-commerce. And as you've mentioned, there are just constant shifts happening. So with so many shifts happening in e-commerce, what's one trend you believe is not just shaping the industry today, but is going to completely fundamentally redefine it in the coming years?
Hands down, it is AI shopping agents. We saw OpenAI launch Operator a couple of weeks ago now. And where I really think things are going is that we're going to have our own personal agents that go and do tasks for us. And one of those actions will be shopping. And so we will use a personal agent in the same way that we sign up for promotions with our emails and text right now. We'll have an agent sort of interacting with these brands that we like and sharing promotions with us and helping us make repurchases and things like that. We'll be using them to create our shopping list for meal planning and then going and actually making those orders at supermarkets. And so there's going to be, when we play that out to its logical scenario, there's going to be a layer in between us as the consumer and the brand or retailer. And so we'll still be interacting with brands directly, but we're also going to have this sort of sidekick that is interacting as well. And so that's going to really change the landscape of, how does a brand get in front of a consumer? And maybe there is this sort of new layer that we're advertising on, which is the AI agent.
And I love that, because AI so far, to me, the biggest use that I'm seeing is like Amazon knows that their review system is broken. So instead of changing it, they just use AI to summarize it in one review. It's like, that's not helpful if you just summarize a bunch of fake or misleading reviews. So I'd like to hear what you're saying, that it will be much more useful to the shopper. And with that, AI driven recommendations, social commerce, other innovations, transforming how we shop online. Which technological advancements do you think are having the biggest impact on consumer behavior today? And how should brands adapt to stay ahead of what's coming soon?
Yeah, so I think the AI agent is that use case I laid out. We're still a little ways off there, with technology needs to catch up and consumer behavior needs to catch up. Like my mum she first heard the term ChatGPT 3 months ago. So,
Yeah.
it's going to take a little while. Although I saw some stats recently about different generations and how they're using generative AI to search instead of Google and whatnot for product research. And it's pretty astounding what the uptake is there. It's over 50% for millennials and Gen Z. So your question about transforming how people will shop online, I think that's where we're starting. People doing some more research through their preferred platform, Perplexity or ChatGPT. Like my husband, he's very fussy when it comes to clothing, and he used ChatGPT to find some new brands to try out t-shirts. He went to the store to buy them, to try them on and buy them. So I think that's the thing, is just like we have today, this, brands are having to figure out this sort of fragmented shopping experience. That's still going to exist in the future, but we're going to have there's going to be a new fragment, which is discovery and eventually purchasing happening through AI assistants and agents.
Such an interesting use case. I mean, clothes fit people so differently. Like certain brands are for different builds. So to be able to use ChatGPT to find that and break out of the one or two brands that you're comfortable with, that's a great use case. So you mentioned agility has always been key to kind of staying ahead, and often is cited as a key to success. In startups, agility is what works for them. Without agility, they will die quickly because they don't have enough money to be bullheaded and just keep on charging forward no matter what. You have to constantly react to what's happening around you, what the market is saying, what your customers are saying, and act quickly. We're not necessarily seeing that in e-commerce as much. For instance, people still have the same influencer budgets that they had 5 years ago, even though influencers are not as effective at conversion as they used to be. They're not as effective as certain things. They're not saying, okay, well, we know where to utilize influencer in our funnel these days, so we're going to allocate budget elsewhere. This is their budget for this. This is what they do. They keep on moving forward. What advice do you have to give brands a thought of how to stay agile? The small ones, I think they're agile by nature, but the bigger brands, the medium-sized brands or bigger brands that have something that's been working for them, what advice do you have for them to kind of stay agile and dynamic in this space?
Yeah, the biggest tension I see for larger brands, and this is why I love this industry so much, is that the people leading e-com or retail media, these sort of digital channels, often have to be the change makers within their organization. E-commerce for a lot of these larger brands is still a relatively small channel for them, and a lot of sales still come through traditional brick and mortar retail. Within enterprise, that might be 8 out of $10 is still coming through brick and mortar channels. So really this challenge falls on the shoulders of a small group of people who are within organizations trying to turn this big ship and do a lot of education and advocacy within their organizations. And I think that everyone wants to move faster, but these things take a while. And I speak with a lot of brands about how do you educate and advocate internally. And it is just a lot of continued exposure for these people. It's showing senior leadership let's do a search on Amazon together and see what our category looks like from the consumer perspective and where we're showing up. And why don't you do a search for our brand and see this new video ad that we've produced and how it sort of pops off the page. So a lot of it is demonstration and educating on, like, you might go and walk the store or do some store visits as an executive. Let's walk the virtual store together and bring the brick and mortar fundamentals, like align that to the digital equivalent. And that's sort of how I think change and agility is built over time, is just with a better understanding of how the ecosystem works and what's important.
All right, that brings us to segment 4. I want to talk about brand trust and your advice for building brand trust these days. A lot of, especially smaller brands, the first discovery of a consumer with their brand is still influencer marketing. That's where people are going to discover it, learn about it, become aware of it. And it used to be, up until very, very recently, enough to drive people all the way through the funnel. Obviously, it still does in many cases, but there's a lot of different factors that come into play now. So as consumers have grown, I don't want to say more skeptical. I just think they've become aware that influencer marketing is marketing. And when people become aware of marketing, it's obviously less effective. People know what a billboard is. It still works, but they're very well aware of it. So as consumers have grown more aware of traditional influencer marketing, there's been all types of expert-driven strategies that have emerged as powerful ways to build trust and credibility. And unlike influencers who often promote, or people believe they promote, products based on sponsorships, experts bring knowledge, authenticity, and real value to their endorsements, qualities that resonate deeply with today's consumers. So brands have invested heavily in influencer marketing over the years. I'm sure you've seen an uptick from almost zero when you started to massive numbers. And I wonder where that is now, if it's at the same numbers or if you see it declining. But what's the biggest mistake that brands make when trying to build trust through influencers these days?
Yeah, so I'll try and speak to this question through my experience with marketplaces. I don't think that necessarily brands try and align those two channels together between retailers and influencers necessarily. Anecdotally, I hear of brands running an influencer campaign and we see a massive increase in branded search queries over on Amazon for some, products that the influencers were promoting. So I think that there is this dream, and people hear of these wild success stories like, oh, our branded search terms jumped 700% or whatever. And not to say that those don't happen, but I think we, just like with social media in general, we often hear of these like highlight reel stories where the overall campaign may not have delivered something quite as impressive. It's sort of these one-time examples that we hear about that sound super impressive.
Yeah, that's such a great call. And I think you're right. It is what social media is, right? It's the highlight of people's lives. It's not every day. It's not the average. It's the highlights. So have you seen it over the years take more and more market share? Do you think that it's changing? Do you think that there's oversaturation? Is there a deeper shift in consumer expectations? Or is it just brands have to get used to, you're going to have to bucket and use your money differently to speak to people throughout different parts of the funnel?
With the exception of some really big celebrity endorsements that everyone is going to know. So an example I'm familiar with from C4 Energy, where Kevin Hart is an investor and spokesperson for that brand. A couple of years ago, they did a Prime Day activation. Kevin Hart went on live video. It was basically the only example I've ever heard of a brand doing live stream video on Amazon and actually selling a huge volume of products. It's like, well, Kevin Hart comes and does stand up on Amazon Prime Day. I guess it's going to sell a whole lot of energy drinks. But so beyond the sort of the big celebrity influencers, I think the reason why influencer marketing has been effective in many instances is the intimacy that they have with a particular audience, and like more of a niche influencer will have. And that's hard to replicate on major retail marketplaces. So I might be introduced to a brand through an influencer, but that's not necessarily how that brand will want to include all the references to the influencer on their product detail page, because that might be a niche influencer for them. But for brands on marketplaces, they can't link into their influencer content all that regularly, because often it is very fragmented and they'll have different influencers with different messages, potentially different audiences. So that's one big limitation that I see on the retail marketplace side, is an inability to really tap into that content because it can be quite niche and fragmented.
Yeah, it's interesting. And even that niche content or reaching a niche demographic, that is still at the end of the day, that's based on who's the right person to talk to this demographic. And that's what retailers are offering through their retail networks. They're saying, we will tell you who to talk to, when to talk to them, what the message is that's right for them to get them to convert. So it's very interesting to think about it in terms of the niche ways that you can communicate with an audience is really what retail media is about as well. And that brings us to segment 5. Segment 5, leveraging data for success. So in today's digital first world, data is everything, but knowing how to use it effectively, it's just as important as having it in the first place. So optimizing product listings to refine ad strategies, data could be the difference between success and failure on platforms like Amazon and Walmart, even though they make it as easy as can possibly be to engage and interact. So with so much data available, what are the most critical metrics brands should focus on to succeed on their retail marketplaces?
Yeah, so it's about choosing the right tool for the job. Let's just talk about retail media for a second. There's so many metrics that you could track and that the platforms put on their dashboards that it's easy to be overwhelmed by all the different metrics and what they're really telling you. And there can be a lot of false signals. And so it's about choosing the right tool for the job, means that based on what objective you're trying to achieve, looking at a metric that is going to tell you if you're moving towards that objective, if you've achieved it already, and where you might be able to improve. So, for example, ROAS, or return on ad spend, is a front and center metric on every advertising dashboard because it's really easy to calculate. And there is some sense that I can compare ROAS from my Meta campaigns to my Amazon campaigns to whatever. But it's a very blunt tool in that it's not effective at all at measuring reach and awareness and engagement with your brand from new customers. I see a lot of brands getting sort of hung up on metrics that don't really correspond with their objective. It's really going back to what is our objective for this product, for this brand, for this campaign, for this particular ad buy, and choosing the right tool for the job.
Sure. Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, every campaign has to be very different. Awareness, consideration, education, conversion. What are the key metrics that you would suggest no matter what? You should always measure these, especially when it comes to, are your product images the right ones? Are the videos the right videos that are communicating the value of the product to the right audience? Any metrics that directly influence conversion rates and return rates in e-commerce that you see throughout the board?
Again, it's going to sort of come back to the type of campaign as well. So a display ad campaign, we're going to be looking at impressions and maybe clicks through to the ad, but we're maybe not necessarily going to be looking at conversions on that ad right away. And this is where retail media, especially the more advanced ones that have data clean rooms and more advanced reporting, this is where it can be really effective, because we're not just looking at the last touch attribution of, did this ad produce a sale? We can actually look at the full journey and say, hey, one of our most effective journeys is a display ad and then a sponsored product ad. And the sponsored product ad may get all of the direct sales. So you think, wow, that's got a really high ROAS. We should be throwing more money into sponsored product ads. But you can see through that journey tracking that if a customer wasn't exposed to a top of funnel display ad first, they're not familiar with your brand or your brand promise or about the product in general, and they don't actually convert on the sponsored product ad when they see it later. So this is not available with every retailer right now because many that long tail don't have these capabilities yet, but certainly on Amazon and Walmart, and I think Instacart is getting a lot better at this, as well as this sort of multi-touch attribution capability and looking beyond that last click.
Yeah. And you were saying, when we started this, before we started recording, that you were just listening to the podcast we put out with Ash from Advantis Health. And
yes,
one of the things that I loved about working with her, and that what I just heard yesterday from another client, is that by shifting the content around for when somebody sees our video first, it actually creates a halo effect on all of the other content. All of the other content performs better. So to your point, knowing that somebody was able to see that banner ad or didn't see the banner ad brings so much more information to how they're going to structure their next campaign and go forward. The problem is the transparency. It's still a challenge at certain retail media platforms. Like, it's very hard to collect the data, and especially all of that data that you're talking about. What did they see first? How did they interact? How long were they on a page? It's difficult. So do you have any tips, tricks, strategies brands could use to work around the limitations to make those informed decisions?
I think every platform has its limitations, and it's understanding what those are for sure. And it's hard to give a one-size-fits-all answer. What I see is really effective for brands is, I used to own an agency, and that was actually a really great way for brands to tap into someone sort of sitting outside of their brand and giving some context. Like, here's what we're seeing with other brands. And here's, there's a little bit more light that a consultant or an agency can shine because they're stepping out of your category. They're looking at other accounts. They're looking at other sales channels potentially. But if you don't work with an agency or a consultant, I think just as effective can be having a peer group of people that you trust at other brands that you can talk about. What are you seeing here? Beyond data is, what kind of terms is Amazon requesting from you this year? Because it can be different from vendor to vendor, and knowledge is power in these cases, and having some perspective outside of your brand from peers or consultants or an agency can be a really effective way to understand, are you seeing the full picture here? Are you getting everything that you could from the retailer that you're working with?
Right. And is all RMN data created equal? I hear a lot of our clients have frustration not only with getting the data from different retail media networks and of how different campaigns perform, but that there's discrepancies between them.
Yes.
So how should brands approach analyzing data across these different retail media networks to get the actionable picture of performance? And what strategies can they use to integrate insights from multiple RMNs to optimize their on-platform and off-platform marketing efforts?
I think you either need to have a really strong data scientist, analyst on your team who loves pulling this data and analyzing it themselves, or you need to find a third-party tool that does this for you. There is really great technology today that will run different types of attribution models across different retailers and different campaigns coming in and give you some sense of how. I think a big challenge that people have with these walled gardens is, I could run an ad on Amazon and actually get that sale later at Walmart because I'm running top of funnel, awareness campaigns on Amazon. I see that sale happen somewhere else. So you want to see that lift. And today there's lots of incremental measurement tools from third parties that I think most brands should really be considering paying for some kind of data analytics package to actually be tracking that and give them a bit more of a viewpoint beyond, just what data Amazon or Walmart is giving back to you.
Yeah, it would be great if everybody could access their data. Segment 6, last segment, future trends in retail media marketplaces. We spoke a bit about this, but let's go into a little bit more detail. So e-commerce, it continues to evolve at just an incredible pace. What was cutting edge just a few years ago, it's now baseline expectations, both for consumers and for brands working with retailers. So looking ahead, it's not just about how e-commerce will evolve, but really the more important thing is how can brands keep up with the rapid changes and even stay ahead of the curve. So you mentioned emerging technologies like AI-driven personalization and digital twins, poised to revolutionize how consumers shop online. Imagine a world where every online shopping experience is tailored specifically to you. Very creepy, but effective, not just based on your purchase history, but real-time insights into your preferences, habits, and even your digital avatar. So these innovations, they're not futuristic concepts anymore. They really are beginning to take shape. They're going to fundamentally change the way that brands engage with their customers. And as you mentioned, the way that customers engage with brands. Like if I have a ChatGPT agent doing all the engagement with brands, that's going to totally change the way that I think about my relationship with any one particular brand. At the same time, the importance of omnichannel strategies, it does continue to grow. So consumers today expect seamless experiences across all platforms, shopping across Amazon, browsing in store at Target, scrolling through Amazon. I want the same experience with a brand. Brands that can integrate these channels effectively are going to be the ones that continue to thrive in this new landscape. But with all this innovation comes extreme complexity. So in this segment, I want to dive into these questions. You have a very deep understanding of where commerce is headed and what brands need to do today to succeed tomorrow. So what emerging trends do you think? I know you mentioned the AI and the digital twin, and you could go into more detail, but what emerging trends do you think will have the biggest impact in e-commerce over the next 5 years? What steps should brands take to prepare for these changes now?
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes back to AI for me and that AI agent experience where we're going to have this sidekick helping us shop and stay up to date with our loyalty memberships and, what I think the AI agents will be eventually suggesting personalized offers to us, reminding me that I need to buy sunscreen for my vacation next week. And, my favorite sunscreen brand has a new variant I should check out. So that's 100% where I think things will, head in the next couple of years. But I think we're also, Amazon has Rufus now, which is an assistant on its website it shows that we'll be moving beyond keyword-based search queries to more natural language questions, and that the way that Rufus works is not based on keywords necessarily, but it's all contextual information. So what brands need to understand, and there's some good resources about how Rufus works today, is to look at how that technology is surfacing product recommendations and move beyond this sort of keyword-driven optimization of product content into one that is suited for AI in the future, which requires a different way to build product content. Frankly, the best practices are still being written there. It's a wild time to be around in this area because what we have all been optimizing for with the search algorithms, that's all going to change with AI assistants and AI agents. So again, there's not a playbook I can recommend, but it's just something that you must be on top of because it's going to change really quickly from here on out.
Nothing in this podcast, no interview, no conversation has made me squirm as much as the concept of brands having to create content for AI instead of for the software. That's a heartbreaking concept.
Yep.
Like forget about the person make content for AI. But with AI generated content on the rise, how can brands differentiate themselves? I mean, AI is super easy to make content. It could be changed very easily for the brand, but at the end of the day, they still need to make sure their message for now remains human. It remains credible. It's speaking to their audience, authentic, trusted. Where does that sit within the AI generated content ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a really good point. How can you be authentic? And I think to your point about like creating content for AI, I think AI is sort of like money. It doesn't have a preference about who it goes to or what, it's just a device. It doesn't have emotions and feelings. It wants to find the most relevant thing for the job it's given to do. And so I think in the past with product content, we had to create one product page with all the features and benefits and use cases, but it had to be super generic, right? With Ash from Advantis, one of their hero products is Triple Paste, which is actually a diaper rash cream.
Yeah.
But as she mentioned, it's become this like part of a skincare regime for dermatologists and like beauty enthusiasts. So you go to the Triple Paste product page and it's not going to mention face basting overnight for, clear, beautiful skin on an adult face. It's going to talk about diaper rash. And this is sort of the optimistic side of what you're talking about. In the future, we'll have more personalized content, and the AI is going to tell me if I'm asking about face basting and which type of, cream I should use for that, then it might show me content about Triple Paste that is about skincare rather than, diaper rash treatment. So I think that's where the puck is going, and it does actually create more options for brands to address the needs and interests of different personas, because different products have different use cases. Like even a can of Coke, like people might have a can of Coke for so many different reasons. Maybe not the best example, but
Sure. I'm with you. There's digestion.
Yeah, there's different personas, different reasons why people buy it for a first-time buyer versus a repeat buyer. So I think that's the optimistic view.
Yeah, that's a very optimistic view. I love the Triple Paste example because we actually created content for Triple Paste's website and their retailers, and we had podiatrists and doulas. But I wanted to also use surfers because it is like the best sunscreen hack. Like you could use it as sunscreen and it's way cheaper than sunscreen. However,
interesting, because of the zinc.
Yep. But it is not classified as that with the FDA or whatever it might be. So the brand actually can't get behind that, even though it's like a trending aspect of it. My wife also burnt her hand the other day and we used Triple Paste on it, and Triple Paste really helped. So that was, it is very interesting. Are there any emerging retail media platforms, new advertising channels that brands should be watching closely? What makes them stand out? Anything exciting that you're seeing that hit the market that's really different or that you've been waiting a while for?
It's pretty incremental at this stage. I think that there's still a lot of basics to figure out. There's a big, call in the industry for measurement transparency, and different retailers have different ways of attributing sales and performance. That kind of stuff really needs to be figured out. Like this is the basics that need to be figured out before I think a lot of brands are going to be willing to throw more money into, especially the longer tail of retail media. They need to feel confident that the results are being measured correctly and in a way that they understand and can compare properly between different channels.
And that brings us to the final conclusion questions, Experts Corner. So I am going to just give you 5 rapid fire questions. The first thing that comes to mind based on your experience, let me know what you're thinking. It could be one word, you could go into detail, whatever you want. But what is a strategy everyone's following, but nobody is questioning?
I think AI content.
Yeah. What's a trend that you think will be on the decline or even dead within the next year?
Trying to hack product reviews.
Nice. What's one thing you think everyone in your industry is afraid to admit?
That we really don't have a super clear understanding of the purchase journey across different retailers.
What's the most controversial opinion that you hold?
That our AI agents are going to do our shopping for us.
Look, ChatGPT, they released a shopping agent last month that you could pay $250 for. So it's here. I'm with you. It's not controversial anymore.
People don't like to hear it though. Like, are you saying we'll never go to stores again? No, we'll still keep going to stores, but it's the
real.
Same.
If you had to bet your career on one prediction, what would it be?
That we'll be using AI agents to do our shopping in 2 years.
Nice. All right. Well, that's strong. So today's conversation, it was packed with insights about the evolution of retail marketplaces, the rise of retail media, and the growing importance of expert-driven content in building trust with consumers. Thank you, Kiri, so much for being here, joining us, and sharing your expertise. It is always wonderful to see you. It has been a while. Can't wait to have you back on U.S. soil with us. But thank you very much for today. If you want to connect with Kiri, please visit kirimasters.com and retailmediabreakfastclub.com. Thank you all for tapping into an expert, where we tap into the experts for you. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Tap Into an Expert so you don't miss out on future conversations. If you want to learn more, visit thedesiredcompany.com and click on resources.
Thank you, Eric.